I was thinking of the things God has done for us. I was also spent a good part of the week thinking about sin. No, not committing sin, just thinking about sin. The story, the woman caught in adultery, the sin that jumps out at you is adultery. And there's not a person here that does not appreciate what a serious sin that was. But I got thinking about some details in the story and realized, well, there's some other sin in this story. Notice, for example, that the man is missing. They caught this woman in the very act of adultery. Well, she had a partner, and the guy's nowhere to be found, and they're quoting Jewish law at Jesus. And that Jewish law was against adultery for both the guy and the gal. So if they were really interested in justice, if they were interested in following the law, the guy would have been there. Now, I know it's true, maybe he got away and escaped or something, but I'm not sure I buy that theory. I think somehow it's significant that they only brought the woman. Another interesting detail, they want to stone this woman and they cannot. They don't have permission to do it. They're under Roman occupation. Rome would not allow them to kill somebody in this way. That's why when we celebrate the Passion, that is why the Jewish leaders had to take Jesus to Pilate to get the Romans to kill him. They were unwilling. They couldn't do it. They didn't have the authority to kill this woman. So that's kind of interesting. They're asking Jesus, they're setting this up as if they're all set, ready to kill the woman, and they aren't. And then there is their motive. If you caught it in the passage, it pointed out that their motive was to test Jesus. To test Jesus. It's not about the right thing to do. It's not about justice, any of that stuff. They want to test Jesus. And so if you put all that together, you start to realize something's not right here. There is sin involved. Now, there are probably lots of ways to put those puzzle pieces together. Let me just give you one possibility. I'm not saying it is the way it went down, but it's a possibility. The religious leaders of the day, they don't like Jesus. They don't like what he's doing. They don't like what he's teaching. They want to get rid of him. And they're looking for an excuse. And so they get this idea, hey, we could really put him on the spot. He's been teaching, forgiveness, love your enemy, all that sort of thing. Let's set him up. Let's put his teaching in conflict with Mosaic law, the law of Moses. And so I'm not at all sure that what they did was, what they might have done, I should say, is they got a guy and told him, hey, we need you to seduce this woman, commit adultery with her. We'll catch you in the act. It'll be all prearranged. We'll catch you, but we're not gonna do anything to you. You're just gonna get to go. And we're gonna grab this woman and take her to Jesus and see what Jesus is willing to do. In other words, they used her. They used her. They did not care in the least about this woman, about her life, about her reputation, anything like that. They used her in order to accomplish something that they thought should be accomplished. That is a sin. And to my mind, that is a sin right up on par with committing adultery. Maybe worse if the guy really did lead this woman into this sin. So what is the application for us? In other words, you look at this and you say, okay, well, that's an interesting theory. What's it got to do with me? I was just wondering if you and I do this, if we see this in our day. There's something going on and there is sin involved, and it's sin and we know it, but we get caught up in that sin and we forget about the other sin that is around it. If you allow me a terrific example of this, and again, I'm not trying to be controversial here, think of the issue of immigration, that policy debate in our country right now. Illegal immigration. It's illegal. That's wrong, okay? We could all agree with that. But what about the rest of the sin that's going along around it? Our leadership, both parties, I might add, over the last maybe 15, 20 years, what have they done with this? They have campaigned on it, because it's a good campaign issue. Because sometimes they can say the right words to get you and I really, oh, and then we'll go vote for them. In other words, some, not all, I'm sure, but some of our political leaders are using these people, using them for their own gain. And so often we forget that sin. We just concentrate on the sin of the illegal immigration. And again, I'm not justifying that. That's not right. You have an obligation to obey the laws of whatever the country is. And if the immigration system in our country needs to be fixed, and it does, it needs to be fixed by Congress. But Congress refuses to do it because it's easier to make it into a political topic than it is to actually solve the problem. It's easier to use these people than to figure out what's the best way to handle immigration in our country. But there's also lots of examples of this in our own lives. Do you not, you and I, occasionally, whether it's not news, but just in our own lives, maybe in a workplace, you see somebody and they're not doing something right, and you know it's wrong. And it is wrong. And there's no doubt about that. But you get in this mode where you, I'm gonna do something in response to this that is in itself sin. In other words, rather than being, if you will, what Jesus is, he points out to the woman what she did was wrong. He offers forgiveness. Rather than taking that approach, we take the approach of judge. And you will remember, Jesus told us, don't judge. Now, mind you, that's like that you would not want to go on jury duty because, well, I can't judge. It's not that at all. Jesus is asking us to be careful about how we judge. Because certainly there are things that are wrong that we see in the world, in our daily lives, and we ought to judge those things as good and bad. But we need to be really careful how we do it. It was probably better put by Jesus when he said, hey, be careful about how you judge, because the way you judge, that is the way that God is going to judge you. And so when we just start judging people by the way they look or by some category we've stuck them in, and we forget that they're human beings, we forget that we don't know anything much about their situation, when we forget all that and we just judge them and it's a nice, clean, black and white sort of thing, we're basically saying to God, hey, I'd like you to judge me that way too. Judge me that way. Black and white. Don't cut me any slack. Don't, so when I ran the red light because the guy in front of me didn't go right away, hey, that wasn't really my fault. Don't be doing, hey, the light was a little red when you went through it. Don't do that. Cut me some slack because it wasn't really my fault. And when we judge people black and white, we're saying to God, well, judge me that way. I'd be happy for you to do it. And I don't know about you, but I don't want God to judge me that way. I need God to cut me a lot of slack. I need God to say to me, hey, don't be doing this again. But I need God to forgive me. I need God to say, hey, I kind of understand what's going on. You live in a fallen world, but still, you need to do better. And God will give us a fresh start. And so I encourage you to give this some thought. To what extent do you and I, do we unfairly judge? Either that's by putting labels on people, or because we've got people, yelling in our ears that tell us we should judge people wrong. We really ought to give that some thought. This Wednesday, I hope you know that it's our Lenten penance service here. That'd be perhaps something that you and I need to bring to confession. To say to the Lord, I never really thought of this much before, but yeah, I think I do. I think I judge people unfairly. And I'd like to do better. Give me eyes to see the people That when I see that they're doing something wrong, yes, that's wrong. I need to see that. But also give me eyes to see these people as children of God, beloved people, people that you care about, just like that woman. Jesus cared about her. He was willing to see what was going on. He was willing to see all the sin that was going on, not just hers, but all of it. And fortunately was able to get all those people to realize, oh yeah, we got as much sin as this woman, which is why they left. And then Jesus was able to correct the woman, forgive her. What a wonderful thing. It's a terrific story. And the Lord will do that for us as well.